Sandra said, I'm working with a large team of people. I'm working as a consultant on the Prop 4 campaign, but this is a campaign that is being run by a steering committee. Megan Cleveland, I think, is on the call. TNC is one of the big groups, part of the Prop 4 campaign, as well as the Trust for Public Land, the California Council of Land Trust, CCLT, which is represented by Save the Redwoods on the steering committee, and as is, well, no, actually, no, that's SWNRP. That's the, I forget what SWNRP stands for, but it's a collection of organizations that read at us. And Save the Redwood League is the chair, and Bridget Fithian, who's with Sierra Land Trust, is the representative for CCLT on the steering committee, as is Trust for Public Land, which I might have already mentioned, and Resources Legacy Fund, but they're called the Fund for Better Future as part of, because of various issues with how you spend money. Anyways, there's a lot of people working on this campaign, and it is a very important campaign. And so I want to spend some time talking about, various parts of the campaign, but also what's in Prop 4. I'm going to go over public polling messaging, endorsements, how to support questions. And I will try to do this with giving people plenty of time for questions. You can put your questions in the chat, or you can save them. I'm not going to monitor the chat right now, just because I am incapable of multitasking when it comes to technology. So first, I would just, and some of this I think is kind of obvious to most of you guys, but Proposition 4 was put on the ballot after the legislature passed a Senate Bill 867, authored by Senator Ben Allen, but it was a large collection of state, Senate, and Assembly members who were very involved in getting the final version of what ultimately is Prop 4 onto the ballot. So we're talking about, in the Senate, it was Senator Allen and Senator McGuire and Senator Stern and Senator Gonzalez and Senator Lamone. It was and Senator Becker. There was a large number of folks working on it. And on the Assembly, we had Assembly member Eduardo Garcia, who had his own bond, but also part of this, and he is termed out, but he gets a lot of credit for keeping this climate bond moving, along with Assembly member Connolly, Assembly member Wilson, Assembly member Wood. So there's, again, a lot of people invested in getting Proposition 4 onto the ballot, which we will vote on in November. It's a $10 billion climate bond. And as you can read, it prioritizes, it's trying to flip the script on how we're dealing with climate. So we started this call chatting about the hurricane that's about to hit Florida, but we're all experiencing the impacts of climate change, because the other thing we were talking about is the fact that we've had consecutive days of 100 degrees plus in parts of California in October. So we are experiencing climate change. And the thing that we need to do to flip the script on climate change, in addition to reducing carbon emissions, is we need to take a preventative approach to how we address climate change. We need to invest early in measures to produce climate resilience. And the bond is intended to do that. So instead of responding at very expensive, when we have massive fires, we're working to prevent massive fires. We're working to ameliorate the worst impacts of sea level rise and the worst impacts of climate, of extreme heat. So that's the point of this bond. And the bond is coming at a really critical time as well, because we've seen a reduction in what we call general fund, which is tax revenue, which is what we use to pay for a lot of the things that we do as part of our state in terms of trying to be climate resilient. And just last year, we saw a reduction over $1 billion in natural resource funding that we thought were going to fund projects consistent with 30 by 30. And therefore, having this bond come at this time is really critical, because 30 by 30 is not going to happen unless we have significant funding available to do all of the conservation and restoration that we plan on doing. So before I talk a little bit more about 3030, I just want to say that there has been a lot of polling being done around Prop 4. And as you can see here, the polling is looking really good. Now, I wouldn't say it's a slam dunk for Prop 4 at all, but the latest PPIC poll shows that the poll, it's polling, actually the latest PPIC poll is showing, I think, over 60%. Now we're doing additional polling as part of the campaign, but it resonates with people when you talk about climate resiliency and the need to invest in a preventative measure. I'll talk about messaging in a minute, but this is good news for us. The thing that we, worry about, because we never count on everything being certain, is, there is economic uncertainty out there, and there is some concern that could suppress the yes vote on Prop 4. But I'm going to talk about the campaign and everything that people are doing to try to get Prop 4 over the finish line. But I think the polling results thus far are promising, and we should be happy about it. So the Prop 4 campaign is, we're talking about this as part of a 30 by 30 perspective, because that's what we are, power in nature. But when you're communicating to the general public who may not know so much about 30 by 30 or the importance of protecting biodiversity as part of a climate resilience tactic, you need to communicate with people in a way that's, going to resonate with them. And so the messages that seem to, that resonate the most with voters is preventing devastating wildfires and smoke. So this is one of the key messages of Prop 4. And another one is that you'll see a lot of in the Prop 4 materials is protecting the water we drink, because not surprisingly, we all drink water, and a lot of California does not have access to clean and affordable drinking water. Not only do they not have a supply, but maybe the supply that they have is not clean enough to drink. And that plagues so many communities. It's actually pretty shocking when you think about the fact that our state is the 5th largest economy in the world, yet we literally have communities that do not have access to clean drinking water. And so this is a message that resonates quite a bit. And then finally, the message that resonates a lot, which I already talked about, which is, taking action to prevent future disasters. It's kind of the preventative healthcare approach to dealing with climate. And I would just say, one of the statistics that we talk about is that, if we don't take action, it's been estimated that in California alone, it could cost us $113 billion annually by 2050 from the impacts of climate. So this is a real issue facing our state that we need to get a grip and get on top of and start really trying to take action now. So for purposes of the Power in Nature Coalition, the bond is absolutely critical to our main objective, which is to conserve 30% of our state lands and waters by 2030. And we are making good progress. And I think we are something that, the rest of the world and other states look to, but we will not, we will have a very hard time accomplishing this goal if we do not have sufficient funding to help propel land acquisition through easements and acquisitions and do restoration and land management. And funding is critical. And as I mentioned before, where we do not have the kind of funding and with the tight budgets that we're seeing on the horizon, it is essential to get this climate bond in place so that additional funding will continue to flow to all the projects that all of you guys are working on that you really, really want to see delivered and over the finish line. So I'm going to quickly go over just what's in the bond chapters that I think have a relationship with the 30 by 30. There's a lot in this, and if people have other questions, I'm happy to answer them, but I'm going to really kind of come at this from the 30 by 30 lens. So in the $3.8 billion safe drinking water chapter, There's $605 million going to the Resources Agency to protect and restore rivers, lakes, and streams and improve watershed resilience, including $25 million going to wildlife refuges. There's $150 million of this pot going to the Wildlife Conservation Board for stream flow enhancement. So these are all important funds critical to the 30 by 30 work. In the $1.5 billion wildfire prevention chapter, I would highlight the fact that $1.25 billion of it is going to the Resources Agency to improve local fire capacity. That does include improving forest health and resilience. Specifically, there's $200 million carved out to go to the Resources Agency and state parks for watershed resilience, and $230 million going to the various state conservancies. And some of this funding can include land management and restoration and protection. There's $1.2 billion for biodiversity and natural lands. This is a really important chapter for us. $870 million going to the Wildlife Conservation Board for all the land conservation things that we all care about, with another $180 million going to the Wildlife Conservation Board for wildlife connectivity. $320 million to conservancies, and another $10 million to the resources agencies for tribal nature-based solutions program. These are all programs that we've been championing all along the way, and absolutely essential for 30 by 30. Another $1.2 billion for coastal health. That includes $415 million to the State Coastal Conservancy to protect and restore our coastal waters, our nearshore ecosystems, all, with a relationship to 30 by 30. Another $135 million to the Ocean Protection Council to conserve, protect, and restore marine and ocean waters. And another $75 million to the State Coastal Conservancy for dam removal. Again, important for 30 by 30 to restore streams and rivers. The $850 million for climate infrastructure, it's not, that funding is not 30 by 30 specific. It's mainly aimed at offshore wind infrastructure, transmission, and port enhancements to help the conversion over to offshore wind. I'd say it's the relationship there is the faster we can convert onto renewable energy, the better it is for us. And so that's the main point of that chapter. There's $700 million to create parks and outdoor access. I would highlight the $200 million to state parks to benefit park poor communities, $200 million to the Resources Agency for recreational opportunities in disadvantaged communities, and another $175 million to state parks for deferred maintenance. All important and critical projects. There's $450 million for extreme heat protection. It's not as related to 30 by 30, but it does include money for urban greening and urban forests. So these are opportunities to help address the effects of extreme heat by using nature and natural infrastructure. It also includes important investments in community cooling centers and other resiliency centers. So it is an important chapter. And finally, $300 million for agriculture, sustainable agriculture. That's really mainly aimed at small and medium farms to conserve nature or to conserve water and improve soil health. I will call out that there is $15 million in there for farmland and rangeland conservation. And depending on how that land is managed, and if the conservation is permanent, that could help add to the 30 by 30 outcomes. So I want to talk a little bit about the campaign. So the campaign has been up and running. It has been challenging because, the bond was passed late. So folks really had to sort of start flying the plane as they were building it. But it's been an amazing group of folks and people have been working incredibly hard. In September, the campaign, did a huge amount of work, sort of getting everything going, reaching out to reporters, reaching out to ed boards, interviewing academics and experts to generate information to provide to communities, to the media, to start putting together sort of what we call the collateral material that we would use for social media, for ads on television. So drafting op-eds, letters to the editors, doing event planning. Now we're in October. Ballots have dropped. I literally got my ballot in the mail yesterday. And I have to send my son his ballot. So the ballots are out. And now we have this sort of 1 month period where the voting has started. And we are trying to get into people's brains as they're starting to figure out what they're going to put in their ballot. So we have editorials have been generating. I would say that we've done a pretty good job. The conservative editorial boards have done what we thought the conservative editorial boards would do, which is they have said that, they don't want to spend $10 billion on anything, on bonds. They're pretty much anti-bonds. So we've had, negative editorials from the Bay Area News Group, San Diego Union Trib, and Orange County Register, but we had a positive pro Prop 4 editorial come from the Bakersfield Californian. We had a pro Prop 4 editorial come out of SAC-B, and just this weekend we got a pro Prop 4 out of San Francisco Chronicle, and we're eagerly awaiting the LA Times. And even in those papers where the more conservative owned papers, we also have been successful in placing op-eds by important messengers into those papers, talking about the importance of Prop 4, what it means for communities, for fire, for climate, for water. A lot of the groups, maybe some of you guys on the phone, on the call or the Zoom line here, but certainly throughout the state, have been doing a really good job of writing letters to the editor and generating good stories. So all of that earned media is going on in the state. I would like to highlight that there's earned media events kicking off next week. I'm going to run through the list. I'm going to highlight them because we are looking in those places to turn people out, and you'll probably be getting information from the campaign, perhaps asking you to turn out for the event. So in San Diego, and yay to the San Diego folks, I just want to put a shout out to them. The event is either going to be on the 22nd or 23rd of October at 10:30 in the morning, and it's at the Kendall Frost Mission Bay Marsh Reserve, which is great because it's highlighting the Mission Bay Rewild project. That is a big 30 by 30 project and a focus of a number of the organizations working on 30 by 30 in the San Diego area. So they'll be there, with cameras, and San Diego Bird Alliance and Pam with ECOS and others have been helping get that press conference put together. We're hoping to have representation from the firefighters, California American Water, San Diego Bird Alliance, Nature Conservancy, and we've got to ask out to Senator Alex Padilla to see if he can attend. Then we have Los Angeles, which is a TBD, but we know it's in the morning and we know it's going to be at LA State Historic Park, but we're still waiting to land some of our key speakers before we land on a date. But that, again, it'll be either next week or the week after in LA. In Fresno, the date is October 16th, and it's going to be at the Sumner Peck Ranch on Bryant Road. And we've got the Community Water Action Fund, River Parkway Trust. We put a request out to Assemblymember Joaquin Arambula. So there's going to be a Fresno press conference. There's also a press conference that's going to be held in the Bay Area on the 17th at Candlestick Point Recreation Area, again in the morning, and we're lining up the speakers for that. Save the Bay is going to be there, as well as I think the State Parks Foundation, and we've got asks out to some of the representatives who worked on the bond from the Bay Area in terms of the legislative representatives. And then last but not least, we have Sacramento, which I believe is going to be on the 24th of October at 10:30 at the state capitol. And Mayor Darrell Steinberg is going to be there. We might be, the Sacramento Metro Chamber may be there. We've got water representative, regional water representative, and we're again nailing down the speakers. I'm letting you guys, like I said, I'm letting you guys know about that because again, we are going to ask for people, for groups to turn out if they can. I know it's on a weekday in the morning and that might be tough. But if we can get folks there holding up signs and showing enthusiasm for Prop 4, I think that's really helpful to the overall press event. So those are all going on right now. And we're trying to, like I said, create headlines. So I wanted to focus that on you. And then again, like the last little bit of November will be just, trying to carry it home in terms of what's going on. Endorsements, we've got a lot of endorsements. It is a broad array of folks that have been endorsing Prop 4. You can still endorse Prop 4 if you haven't done so already. If you go onto the Prop 4 website, there is an endorsement link. You can get on that link and fill out the form and get on to the endorsement. Some of the most recent endorsements that we've had in the last week: City of Los Angeles, Sacramento Metro Chamber of Commerce, LA Business Council, Audubon, California Academy of Sciences. So we've, you can click on the website and see the long list of unions, the Democratic Party, which Sandra noted to me that the mailer came out, the slate mailer came out today. We've got Clean Power Campaign, we've got firefighters, we've got Chamber of Commerce, we've got cities, we've got counties, League of Women Voters. I mean, tons of environmental and conservation organizations. It's a great testament to how hard people have been working on this, to see the broad array of folks that are supporting Prop 4. So how to get involved? Well, get on the campaign website. The website is here. I think Sandra might have put it in the chat. You can sign up for weekly newsletters. So we have a newsletter that goes out every Thursday that highlights what's happened in the last week on the Prop 4 campaign. It's the best way to stay in touch. The other great way to stay in touch is join our Thursday calls. We have a Thursday grassroots call. You can when you sign up, you can get the webinar link to then join Thursday's call at 1 p.m. We've got this call coming up tomorrow. We're going to be doing a social media storm and trying to see if we can get Prop 4 to start trending on various social media platforms. And we are also doing a regional breakout for the Bay Area, the South Coast, and the Central Valley towards the end at the latter part of the call, so folks can go into separate Zoom rooms and talk about what they're doing. We also will talk about the press conferences that are being put together as well. So get a lot of information on the campaign website. Social media, follow it on Instagram. I'm gonna see if I can do it's LA Waterkeeper just posted up on their Instagram, and I thought it was really cool. So I'm gonna see if I can be tech savvy, and I'm gonna stop sharing for a second, and then I'm gonna start sharing again on the website. Share. And then I'm going to click on this, and hopefully
about how yes it is for the environment here in California, especially because it talks about helping the LA River, which obviously I love. So let me tell you why you should vote yes on Prop 4. Prop 4 is all about clean air, safe drinking water, wildfire and drought preparedness, which is all yes, 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 and yes. For the LA River, we'd have funding to build the actual emerald necklace of parks. Parks that clean the air, filter water, and store it underground, that give every Angelino a nature break from the madness of the city, and helps LA be more self-sufficient, so we don't have to take as much water from other places. $80 million for the LA River specifically. That's major. It also includes money to restore the Bayona wetlands on the west side, money for coastal ecosystems to prepare for sea level rise, animal and plant biodiversity, open spaces, new parks. It's $10 billion across the state to switch from disaster response to disaster preparedness, to become more resilient to a changing weather landscape, to protect our waterways, to spend some money now but save a whole lot more money later. And the best part, 40% of the money is dedicated to making sure these projects help those who need it the most, communities most impacted by polluted water and polluted air. Honestly, this is one of the best proposition ideas I've heard in years. I will definitely be voting yes on Prop 4. It's an investment in the future that the LA River needs, that Los Angeles needs, that all of California needs. To learn more and get involved, follow LA Waterkeeper. They're doing all the work to keep our waterways safe. I read up on Prop 4 and I was
All right, I'm gonna go back to my screen just to the left, but I really want to share that, because I just thought, wow, that, hold on, there we go. I just thought, one, that guy, man, I don't know how much coffee he drank before that Instagram thing, but he was on fire. And I just thought it was really creative and a great way of explaining to people like how Prop 4 will help you in your area, like in Los Angeles. It was creative, and I just thought it was kind of fun to share. So definitely a lot of work going on in the social media space. There's actually a social media toolkit that the campaign has put together that hopefully Sandra's putting in the chat, because I said I do not know how to do that while I'm still talking. And then there's also a social media toolkit. And I want to highlight the social media, or not social media, there's a campaign toolkit that, again, I think there's a link that hopefully Sandra will put into the chat. But in the toolkit, it has all the information you would need. It has title and summary. It has a legislative analysis. It has key messages. It has Q&A. It has how to use social media. It has samples for LTEs and op-eds. It has sample resolutions that you can take to your city and your counties to do resolution, sample blog posts. It has print your own materials, such as if you want to do a yard sign. So like Sonoma Land Trust has produced yard signs, and they actually did a big sign for their land that they own right at the intersection of Highway 121 and Highway 37. So lots of eyeballs as you're unfortunately sitting in traffic. You know, you can see the Prop 4 sign. They've got signs you could print out and stick in your window, like, you know, you do when your sports teams win. There's also links to the website, fact sheets, regional fact sheets. And again, like the social media toolkit. There's a lot of materials that you guys can access to get the word out to your members, your friends, your family. You know, there's a ton of things that can be done right now in the next month as we drive towards, you know, getting Prop 4 over the finish line. And I guess I would just conclude by saying that if you have any questions, let me know. But the other thing I want to be just flagged for everyone is if you, as a 501c3 organization, endorsing a ballot measure is something you can do, but you should be aware of the rules in terms of how you talk about it, and also how much time, which equals money, is spent on promoting Prop 4. So there is a campaign memo that was put together by Olson Remco, paid for by the campaign, to provide rules and awareness to organizations about what the rules are for when they're, you know, working on endorsing and sharing information about Prop 4. It's not, I'm not saying this to scare anyone or dissuade you from doing any work. You totally can do it. I'm just simply saying, just be aware of, you know, there are thresholds in terms of how much money you can spend on it and how much time if you're doing other lobbying. So just, you know, again, be aware of the rules. And I thought it'd be important to flag that for folks at the end. But lots of opportunities for folks to get involved. The other thing I forgot to mention is in the media markets where we're not doing press conferences, we have a press conference in a box, and it's ready-made. If you want to do a press conference in the Sierra or on the North Coast or on the Central Coast or in some part of California where the press conferences aren't happening, there is materials, again, put together to make it as easy as possible for organizations to take the initiative and get the word out on Prop 4. And so I guess with that, I would just move it into questions. And I'm gonna take it off the screen share so we can see everybody.
Thanks so much, Kim. I did put in the chat the links so you can see the campaign website, the social media toolkit, the campaign toolkit with all the things that Kim mentioned, and also the PDF from the guidance for 501c3. So you have all those resources there. And we wanted to open it up to your questions now. We have Kim here for the next 25 minutes. Please let us know if you have any questions about the bond itself, what's in it, any questions that have come up in your regional groups or in your communities, or anything else. Just please raise your hand, or you could put your question in the chat.
Wow, was it that oh, good. Thanks, Charles. I was like, I know I wasn't that comprehensive.
Thank you for the presentation. This is more of just like a logistical question, but are there any materials or fact sheets we could get our hands on? I have an event down in San Diego this weekend and we wanted to promote Prop 4. We have a big community gathering coming up.
So in the chat, there's the campaign toolkit. And if you click on the link to the campaign toolkit, it'll take you, there's actually a section of fact sheets, and there is a San Diego fact sheet. The campaign's not printing out how do I put this? The campaign is still fundraising and really is trying to like do TV and some of the more expensive things. So they don't have the money to like print out and give you fact sheets, but you can print them out and share them when you guys, or you could, the other is, if you want to try to save money on it, if there's a way for you to put the fact sheet link to a QR code, that's another way that you could do it. So.
Perfect. Thank you. Is that in the social media toolkit or was there a different one that I'm missing?
There's the campaign toolkit.
Someone just sent it.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Perfect.
And there is a social media toolkit, but if you go on the campaign toolkit, it actually has a link to the social media toolkit. They're definitely different.
Perfect. Thank you.
Great, thank you. We have a couple of questions in the chat, but I'll go first to Emily and then Deborah. So Emily, go ahead.
Halka, my question is about the bond, which Prop 4 is uplifting. You were talking about the set-asides for the different agencies, state parks, OPC, etc. How does the bond uplift tribal sovereignty, as well as what are the set-aside for tribal nations?
So first of all, tribes in the list of entities who are eligible to receive funds under the bond, tribes are explicitly listed.
Sure.
So they are an entity eligible for bond funding. That's for all of the bond, for all of it. There are some specific carve outs for tribes. I'm not sure I'm going to remember all of them, but I do know in the clean water section as part of the 610 million for grants and loans to provide clean and affordable drinking water, there's a specific carve out that says not less than 25 million will be for tribal water infrastructure. And then for groundwater storage, recharge, in-stream flow projects that support conjunctive use, there's a not less than 25 million shall be eligible to tribal entities. There's also, I think, noted in the nature-based solutions chapter, a $10 million for the tribal nature-based projects fund. There was, I think, 100 million that was funded out of that, and this would provide another 10 million. And I might be missing other carve outs, but like I said, tribes are eligible for for all of the other pots.
Okay. Because with 30 by 30, as we keep mentioning it within this, the conversation about the bond, it keeps coming up. So, we see a lot of, how do I say, like hot air being blown when it comes to this movement. Like you said, there is that opportunity to participate, but what's actually happening? Myself here on Kumeyaay land here in San Diego, we've experienced the silent treatment. There hasn't been much happening down here when it comes to tribal nations, which is pretty funny if you think about it, because San Diego is the most populated county with tribal nations. So not just within the state, but the entire country. There's 18 federally recognized tribal nations. 12 are Kumeyaay, where I come from. So I think it'd be vital for folks to consider the native vote. And there's actually a native vote organization that you all can work with. I was just calling in, not necessarily to uplift your campaign, but just to learn more about it. So I appreciate you setting this up and allowing me to listen in. But in order to uplift it, I would need to know more detail. Because yeah, how you're talking about the climate change and adaptation that's needed. Most of these spaces, projects, research, leadership is all Western science, which, rules the academic community as well as the conservation community. Never do you see traditional science being included. So that's why I was asking, what are the set asides for tribal nations? Because we are the only group or entities that actually prioritize traditional ecological knowledge. And so, yeah, I'll just stop. I don't want to take up too much time. I thank you for allowing me to ask my question and to join your Zoom.
Of course, of course. And you make excellent points. And I guess what I would say, in the little bit that I know, is that I think there's a lot to be done in follow-up. So if we are lucky enough to have Prop 4 pass and have funding made available, how that money then gets spent will depend on appropriations made in the legislature and the and how programs are going to be rolling things out. And so the points you're making about incorporating traditional ecological knowledge, doing outreach to tribes and making sure that they're being heard and are being that the funding is being made available, and there's support there. Those are all excellent points, and I think there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. So that's kind of, yeah, but yeah, you raise excellent points. And I think and thank you for doing that.
I think just to follow up on that, Kim, I think, and Emily, I'm sure you have more questions, but I think that maybe some specific information, because I think what Emily is saying is that in order to get the votes of the Native community in California, there's going to need to be more information about how Prop 4 will benefit them. So perhaps the campaign could really look at that and a fact sheet or spend information that we could follow up with Emily and others in order to make sure that they have the information to feel comfortable to advocate for it. And then I think beyond, hopefully it does pass. And then, Power in Nature has made it a goal to work on supporting any tribal projects, issues, and can work to make sure that however the money is spent, that it is directed to and made available to tribal communities, and that the Native American data and knowledge is incorporated. So anyway, I hope that's helpful, and we can certainly.
Yeah, and I feel like I know this has come up as sort of like a conversation around trying to produce some kind of fact sheet or additional information coming out of the campaign. I'd have to go back and look and see if they actually did that, so I will do some follow-up.
Thanks, Kim. And thank you, Emily, for coming and for your question. Deborah, you go ahead. You've had your hand up.
Yeah, I live in San Diego, and I have the same question that Pam Hetherington and Barbara Bridolph raised in the chat, which is around the Chaparral Institute, which does a lot of very good work, but has been opposing the brush management and vegetation management done by CAL FIRE, which is destroying native habitats and inviting in then invasive plants. And there is a lot of money in this bond for CAL FIRE for those activities. And
Blown away by how
so I just
yes, it
wanted
is
to
for the
find
environment here in
what
What happened?
I don't know, that was
That
a
was weird.
Zoom something or other, right? And they have come out against it because of that. And so maybe you're aware of that, but I wanted to raise that because it's certainly a concern with so much money going to CAL FIRE for wildlife prevention, which can be vegetation management. I can't hear you.
You're
Sorry,
on
I
mute.
muted myself. So yes, I'm very aware that the Chaparral Institute put out the No One For missive that a lot of folks got, particularly in Southern California. So I guess what I would just say on that is that I agree that everything that CAL FIRE does is not always pro environment. And that there have been or will, mistakes made, and particularly in the Chaparral, in terms of how it's managed to respond to fire. With that being said, a lot of the money that's in the bond going into the fire is being driven through collaboratives and local efforts. And so, I can't guarantee that it'll always result in good projects, but I think that all of us that have been working, like California Native Plant Society, Nature Conservancy, Endangered Habitats League, there's a ton of groups that have been trying to deal with the chaparral issue and trying to have better management. That work needs to happen whether Prop 4 passes or fails. But I don't think it's a good reason to not have Prop 4 pass, because there's a lot of money in Prop 4 that is going to go towards a lot of important restoration work that will benefit all parts of California, including San Diego. And I think that, it just means that if Prop 4 passes, we have to double down on trying to continue to do work through the fire safe councils and through other ways of how this money is getting delivered to make sure that they're doing better in how they're doing fire management work. So I think they've flat, some of the work that's been done in Chaparral, definitely bad. Is that a reason to not pass money to provide clean water, other nature-based solutions? I would disagree with them on that point. So, and on cultural fire and other things, that there was a bill that just passed, because I saw a note about Senator Dodd's bill, SB 310, promoting more cultural fire, did pass the legislature and will be implemented next year, which I actually think is a good thing. But even then, cultural fire is in the Chaparral has been controversial. So, it's, not surprisingly, how we manage our ecosystems is complicated, and people, colonial have not managed it well, which I think Emily made a point in the chat earlier, which is as we hand land back over, and tribes are getting land back, we're not giving it to them in the same condition as when it was taken, which is,
Thanks for bringing up that issue, Deborah and Barbara and Pam, because we know that is circulating around. And I guess I had a question to follow up on that, because I don't pretend that I understand how the bond will work, but let's say the bond passes, we need this money. How much control or how much can we direct, like, how CAL FIRE spends this money? Like, is that given to CAL FIRE and they determine it? Or do we have, the legislature could direct it? Like, can we advocate for money to be spent in a certain way? So it's not to say that when CAL FIRE gets this money, they're just going to use it to clear all the chaparral and ruin all this vegetation. Like, that's not something that would definitively happen.
No, the legislature has a lot of, has all the, has, you know, in order for the money in Prop 4 is not continuously appropriated. It has to go through the legislature in order to be ultimately spent. So in that sense, the legislature has a lot of control because they can add budget control language, they can add trailer bill language, they can pass bills reinterpreting how programs are to be carried out. So there is definitely an opportunity through the legislature, and that's the point I was trying to make, which is a lot of organizations are trying to deal with these issues. They're working through the legislature. They're also when money is being funneled, some of the places where the money is going to is into like the regional forest and fire collaborative programs and fire safe councils. So there's ability to work at the ground up and not, so you can work from both levels, legislature, top down, and you can also work ground up, making sure projects that are being brought forward to be funded are good projects with good practices.
Thanks for that, Kim. And I guess I was asking that question because how do we respond to questions that we're getting about Prop 4? And I would say, just speaking for myself, you know, so much money was cut from the budget for conservation, over $1 billion in the right? It was not allocated or appropriated in the last budget.
Right.
So if Prop 4 doesn't pass, then we are really behind on all of these projects that we want to advance 30 by 30. And there's a huge array of those. So clearly there are issues with how this money may be spent, but do we opt for no money and we say, no, we don't want the money at all? Or do we opt for, let's pass this, let's get the money, and then let's get to work to make sure that that money is spent in the best possible way to advance what we're all working towards? So I hope that's helpful in your conversations and in your communities. And with that, Nicole, your hand is up.
Oh, thank you so much. And I see there's not very much time, so I'll make it quick. Just to that point, Kim, with the legislature having control over how the money is allocated, is there any concern? And if so, is there a strategy to help with potentially like the delays on getting the money out the door? Just as other, you know, pots and pools of money have been.
Right.
Yeah, anything like just not knowing the language in there, they have to
Well,
allocate it by a certain date. Is there any
Right.
parameters around it?
So, well, let me be clear, $10 billion will not be made available immediately. The money will be spent over a period of time, over many years. The state can't, so the state, when you bond, you're selling bonds, and you have to be able to sell the amount of bonds that the Department of Finance can figure out is we're able to manage the repayments in a way that it balances with the budget. So they're not going to go out and sell immediately $10 billion worth of bonds and have $10 billion available. Bond money kind of trickles out over a set of years, dependent on that, dependent on how programs are stood up and money is spent out, dependent on how many projects come in and if the money is being drawn down fast. So it'll be money that's available over a consistent period of time, which is something I just want to say is so important for people that are developing projects to know that there's certainty in a funding stream over a longer period of time so that they can develop the project and which as folks that work on projects know, it can take many years to bring a project to the point where you go to the Wildlife Conservation Board or you go to the State Coastal Conservancy for that grant. And so this provides us with a pipeline for that. With that being said, the earliest we would see this funding in any amount would be after July 1. Because the money would have to be appropriated in the budget, and the budget for the next fiscal year would not be finished until July 1. Because the way our state budget runs is we run from July 1 to January 30th. So once the state legislature passes the budget and the governor signs it, then the money will become available and they can sell the bonds. So more likely than not, we probably wouldn't really see the money until perhaps in the fall. So it just, there is a little bit of time to like get up and going with, but then once it's going, then, you know, we have a more reliable and steady stream, which, you know, is going to be absolutely critical because as we've seen with general fund, it waxes and wanes with where the economy is. And it's very hard to have a strong project pipeline when you're shutting down the WCB website for taking in new grant applications. Then it chills organizations to move forward and pulling grant, you know, projects together. And that's kind of the situation we've been in. Oh, you're
We
muted.
have just 5 minutes left. And Emily, your hand is still up. I don't want to ignore it. Is that from before or did you have another question? Oh, okay, you take it down. Okay, so Joe has a great question. Assume that Prop 4 passes, should we ask our representatives to introduce bills on? And I'm assuming on how it would be, how the money would be appropriated.
If you have ideas, policy ideas on how you think it could be spent better, yeah, there's nothing stopping you from moving forward with something like that. Sometimes you can accomplish that through a legislative bill. Sometimes you can accomplish it through the budget process. The budget process is something I think people don't use as much as they could, which is you can go to the budget committees and they can write language into budget bills that will then put parameters around how money can be spent. You can also do budget trailer bills. I'd say I have there's positives and negatives to budget trailer bills. It is policy that you're moving through the budget. That's not through the policy process, which does cut short the ability of the public. But sometimes it's useful. I don't know. I'm not going to opine on that. I feel very conflicted. But yes, if you got great policy ideas, trust me, there are legislators who are very interested in hearing them.
And Barbara makes a great point earlier in the chat was that the Tribal Nature-Based Solutions Grant Program, which was $100 million, was completely spent right away. And so clearly more money is needed in that grant program, and we should be advocating heavily for funding to be directed there. And I should also mention that you all know Empower Nature, Kim leads our government relations subcommittee, and they're going to be meeting I guess in a few weeks, and then a big planning meeting in November to really talk about priorities for next year. So once we know the results of the election, these are things that can be discussed in that committee to advance next year and that we could all be working towards.
Yeah. And one last thing on the tribal piece, I mean, I think it can always be done better. I do think that the Resources Agency has been trying to stand up and do more land back as part of the conservation work that they're doing. Is it enough? No, but I do think that with the additional funding that would come forward in Prop 4, there will be more opportunities then as those dollars are going out and going to tribes and going to entities who then would be turning land back over. That creates a lot more opportunity for that we wouldn't have if Prop 4 wasn't happening.
All right, with that, thank you everyone for being here. Thank you, Kim, for spending this time with us to answer these questions. I know that I've learned a lot. I hope that this has been useful for you and your work. So Kim, if we have more questions, if we need more, how do we get in touch with you and or the campaign in the weeks ahead?
Well, if you don't have my email, I'm writing it in the chat right now. And you can always email me. But you can also, if on a Prop 4 related issue or question, I think you can also message the campaign. I'm good, I typed it in correctly. Yeah, so that's my email. You can always email me. I'm very happy to talk to anyone, anytime. And like I said, reach out to the campaign directly through the website if you want. And yeah, really thank you for taking the time to listen.
All right, thanks everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day. Hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.
Mhm.